to Solve This Murder. I'm your detective, Bill.
And I'm your crime scene criminal and witnesses, Dani. We're on part 2 of The Affair at the Victory Ball.
In part 1, I was called on to investigate the murder of the 5th Viscount Cronshaw, who died at a victory ball the previous evening.
Upon examining the body, we discovered that he had been stabbed through the heart with a kitchen knife while wearing a costume of the Harlequin character from Commedia dell'arte theatre.
And then, in calling the first person of interest, his possible fiancée, Coco Courtney, discovered that Coco Courtney is dead.
I'm so sorry. If you're not with the police, then you must be an acquaintance. I didn't want to be
No, it's fine. Don't worry, Mrs. Maid Mason. Maid Mason, the Mason. I am from the police. I'm just uninformed.
Oh.
Don't worry your precious little head. Did you say she's died or she's been murdered?
Oh, murder? No, she died. She never woke up.
Died in her sleep?
Yes.
When did she come back?
Last night. Oh, from the party. Oh, goodness, I was asleep. But then I go to sleep quite early. Because I have to wake up early, you see, to make her morning tea.
Of course. That's what a maid does. You're a good maid. How long have you been her maid?
3.5 years.
And so this morning you found her in her bed?
I did.
And she didn't wake up?
She didn't.
Interesting. Gosh. Came back last night, didn't wake up. And you immediately called the police?
Well, you know, at first when I knocked on her door to give her a morning tea, she didn't reply. I thought she just had a big night, so no, I left it for another hour.
Okay.
And then I tried again, and this time I thought something must have been wrong. And then, yes, I immediately called as soon as I realized.
Okay, knocked, no reply.
Of course, I called the medical services, you understand.
Of course, you wouldn't have assumed she was dead, just that she wasn't waking up. And a doctor arrived and announced her dead?
Doctor and police arrived together.
Interesting.
I have since heard about what happened at the party last night. I assume the police came thinking there might have been a connection.
I still possibly think there is. Should I swing round and investigate this scene?
Sure, why not?
Hang up the phone. I'll be there soon.
All right. You arrive, Ms. Mason lets you into the house. There are still police at this venue.
Taking photos with a set-up camera with a hood over the
and
top.
And the thing that explodes at the top.
Yeah, I'd like to investigate the scene, I suppose. Can I go and check out her bedroom?
Yeah, sure. At the moment, the medical people are still just sort of in the process of daintily moving her body a bit.
Don't touch that body!
Yep, a very young woman, also quite pretty. Looks like she had sort of maybe gotten out of a costume but still had somewhat nice clothes underneath and just went straight into the bed. She's not dressed in night clothes. But yeah, as far as you can tell, there is no shocking marks or anything like that. It looks like just a person who could be unconscious.
Interesting. Look, she had cocaine in her snuff box. This could well be a drug overdose. Do I see the costume that she was wearing anywhere? Do I have access to the costume?
You can take a look for where a wardrobe area might be. And it doesn't take you too long to spot something that looks very Commedia costumey.
Interesting. Do we have the details of who she's dressed as?
It's a roughly white costume. You stretch your memory and you think that character is Columbine?
Oh, of course.
I don't know how much we know about that character. I think it's a love interest of Harlequin or a desired love interest of Harlequin.
Yeah, I think so. Again, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to search both what she is wearing and the costume itself for any other interesting items. Perhaps a replica of the Cocoa box, but this one's filled with deadly nightshade. Something like that.
You don't see anything in either the costume or what she's currently wearing.
Interesting.
Yeah. People who take cocaine sometimes hide it in strange places. Maybe the more thorough police investigation will turn up something.
Sure.
You don't see anything super obvious.
It's not white at all. It's just covered in a thin film of cocaine.
No, the costume, on the other hand, you definitely can investigate that thoroughly. But no, nothing
interesting
stands out to you.
No knife holes in the costume?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And of course, mask like hanging off the clothes.
Yeah,
to
no
go with
secrets
it.
in the mask?
No.
They usually have big fake noses, these things. Is it packed full of cocaine?
It's not as big as some of the other characters, this one.
Okay. Okay, well, Columbina. That's in, definitely a love interest because it is somewhere in Vesti la Juba.
Yeah.
There's a Et Arlecchina tinvola Columbina, which is probably the wrong wording. Again, I don't speak Italian. But it's definitely in there talking about Arlecchina and Columbina.
Mm.
So there you go. There's a reference to Commedia in another thing you might know, Pagliacci. In case Pagliacci is a better topical reference for you, because it's like only 200 years old instead of 400 years old or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Or 300 years old. I don't know when Commedia was a thing. Okay. What else would I investigate in this scene? Is there anything if I go through her drawers? Has she left a note? Is she...
No, nothing of the sort.
Interesting. She's died. Maybe she was taking too much cocaine, and that's why her fiance took the snuff box away from her. Said, "Stop taking so much cocaine, idiot!" But then she had taken enough that she already overdosed. Started drinking. I'm not sure. Maybe he killed her by putting cocaine in her snuff box and then taking it away. That doesn't make any sense.
Again, if she is addicted to cocaine,
I also
she's
don't know
probably got
how hard
extras.
Is cocaine overdose much of a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Isn't that the one that happens in Pulp Fiction?
Maybe it is. Yeah, okay, you're right. I don't know. I don't take cocaine. All right. So, interesting. What else can I get out of this? Like, she came home. We don't know when because her maid was asleep.
I can tell you I go to sleep at 9 o'clock in the evening.
That's fine. I kind of already knew she was having dinner at 9 o'clock.
Oh.
That's fine.
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. No, thank you for the help. Thank you for the help. Can I check the door? I know that's a very escape this podcast thing to say. To see if like her key was used to open it or whether someone else like broke in here and dropped her corpse into her bed.
As far as you can tell, it would have been an unlocked door the entire time.
Ah, sure, fair enough. They're all so obsessed with their victory.
Everything's safe now.
Everything's safe now that we've dealt with the geyser. Okay, I don't know. I don't know what else to do here in this scene. I could talk to the police and the medical... Maybe the medical examiner, he's here. Can I be like, cocaine?
It wouldn't surprise me, sir.
No, I was offering.
Oh, my.
No. Do you have any information? Do you know a time of death or a...
Taking a look at this, just through the night at some point, really.
Fair enough.
If it is the case of overdose, that can be a lot harder to tell when a drug was taken compared to when it happens. But I would say, if that's the case, it's likely a drug that she took a large amount of while here, and then it didn't take long to kick in.
Oh, rather than something perhaps she may have had at a victory ball.
No, especially if she were a regular partaker, then amounts earlier in the evening. No, she would have been acclimatized to those.
Interesting. Can I look around the bedroom or the kitchen or the bathroom to see if there's any evidence of having consumed a large amount of something? Can I find a telltale spot full of drugs on a drug stand? Does she have a drug stand?
Just know, I'm going to do this. This is more dramatic flair. This is not in the story, so don't let it lean too hard into your investigation. You go around the house, and what you do find... another suspicious little, smaller this time, maybe size of a matchbox container in the servants' quarters.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to let this affect my investigation. Empty or full of cocaine?
Perhaps some dregs left.
Dregs of cocaine in a servants' quarters where Maid Mason might have been.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Maid Mason?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck's this? You freak.
She has no backbone for this sort of thing. Her lips tremble. She goes, I just wanted to protect her reputation. She was very good to me.
So wait, sorry, protect her reputation from what?
That she always takes... And she gestures.
So what, you stole this from her?
It was on her bedside table.
Oh, come on, Maid Mason.
I'm sorry.
This is a police investigation.
Can't you just say that she went peacefully and it was something in her heart or her brain?
I'm going to call the papers. I'm going to say drug fiend dies and deserves it. Get out of here. No, that's rude. That's terrible. Don't worry, Maid Mason. But look, we got to know these things.
Yes, I'm sorry. I understand. It's all just happened. It was very distressing. I'm sure I would have come to my senses throughout the day.
All right. Well, that's more cocaine in a different box that she would have taken before going to bed, presumably, and then died. Is this a murder? Was she distraught, or does she just love cocaine? I'm not quite sure. If she knew that her possible fiancé had been murdered, maybe the distress caused her to need a lot of cocaine, and then she overdosed. Maybe it was unrelated. Maybe it happened before the murder, and the murder was some kind of angry retaliation for, how dare you give her so much cocaine? I'll stab you in the heart, you coconated freak. I have no idea. I'm really not sure of the situation. I probably need to talk to more people. I don't know if there's more investigation to do here at the Courtney house. Any
Probably
love
not.
letters between her and... Does Maid Mason know anything about Viscount Cronshaw? Does he come by often?
Come by, that would be inappropriate,
Oh, I don't
wouldn't
know.
it? But no, you know
You
what?
20s Brits.
Okay.
I'm from Belgium. It's a free country.
Sometimes Miss Courtney did have an active social life. She had many friends, and yes, sometimes they would come by.
Interesting. Not last night, I would assume. That you noticed.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Fair enough.
But yes, as far as I know, he seemed a charming enough young man.
Not the kind of man you'd like to murder?
Excuse me?
He's been murdered.
Well, yes, I know that. I see. I shouldn't think anyone would like to murder him, from what little I knew of him.
Okay.
I understood him to be a popular choice of Viscount. As they're chosen.
Yeah, but he was voted in.
Yes.
He's probably going to keep it next election.
Hmm.
The next Viscount election. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Maid Mason.
I'm sorry for everything.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I found your sordid secrets and I solved this crime. You did it. Take her away. Take her away, boys. Yeah, I suppose I should call the next people in line.
All right.
Now I've got two bodies to talk about.
Yeah, so you've got Mrs. Mallaby, one of the people who found the body. You've got Eustace Beltane, the uncle, and you've got the actor couple, Chris and unnamed Davidson.
It's terrible. What is this, Sleeping Beauty?
The Queen in Sleeping Beauty is unnamed throughout the film. Though
Yeah,
apparently,
it's
if
so
you search
strange.
Wikipedia, she does have a name.
But they just keep being like, King Stefan
And the
his
Queen.
wife. Yeah, it's very strange. Let's call Eustace Beltane, the uncle.
Understood. Would you like to call him or call upon him?
Let's call upon him to meet me at my office.
Oh, interesting.
I can meet him at his home, I suppose. I'll meet Eustace at his home.
All right, you show up at the Beltane household. It is reasonably opulent. And a man, already wearing the finest suit, comes to the door himself and greets you.
Are you prepared to do a voice for a man named Eustace Beltane?
I'm running out of voices.
Make him a southern gentleman. I know it doesn't fit, but his name's Eustace Beltane. I'm Eustace Beltane.
Can I combine that with English and make it, like, apparently authentically Shakespearean? I'm Eustace Beltane.
Oh, please don't, please don't. No, I don't like this.
The vowels will go anywhere.
I'm Eustace Beltane. Welcome to my house. Are you looking for my nephew? He's died.
Some of the adjectives used to describe him in the book are suave and handsome.
And the suave. Please, give me a voice for Eustace Beltane. Don't overthink it. Just believe in yourself.
They're gonna all of them are gonna sound the same.
I'm Eustace Beltane.
I mean, I am still royalty, so I can't sound that bizarre.
Wonderful. Eustace Beltane.
Please come into my house.
Danny, you know a vampire can't come into the house unless you invite them in? I don't know what happens when a vampire invites you into his house. I don't want to go in. I'll stay in the doorway. No, okay, I can go into Eustace's house.
To my sitting room it is.
Come up to the lab. All right.
I am eager to assist you in whatever must be done in order to solve this horrendous crime against my nephew.
Of course, so this is your nephew's death that you are interested in. You know already that he has died.
Yes, of course, I was at the party.
You were at the party. Could you tell me more about the party?
What would you like to know? It was about the 18th victory ball I've attended over the last few years.
It feels a bit gratuitous, doesn't it?
You could say that. But I suppose, I'm not going to say anything, not a bad word. The soldiers could not do with more They need as much celebrating as we're giving them.
Yeah, of course. You had dinner with your nephew.
Yes, that was part of the evening.
About 9
A
PM?
shorter part of it. I suppose that's right. Yes, we arrived at 8 o'clock, mingled for some time, and then sojourned.
Anything interesting in your first hour of mingling before sojourning?
Oh, it was all just a wild laugh of costumes and trying to guess. You see, towards the very end of the night, there's a face reveal. But obviously, in the earlier stages of the night, you're just going around trying to guess to see if you know anybody.
Of course. What were you dressed as? Il Dottore?
No, I was Punchinello.
You were Punchinello.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a glorious costume. I cannot thank the artists enough.
Should I follow up on this? Who made your costume?
Oh, it was just one of the spectacular theatre tailors that my nephew knew, but not just that artist, but the sculptor who made the figurines.
The figurines?
Oh, so he gestures to his mantle above the fireplace. You see there, 6 figurines, handcrafted in Italia.
You could just call it Italy, man.
I was there some time ago, and I brought these back, and my nephew, a big passion of theatre.
Just speak English, Mr. Beltane.
I'm sorry.
Mon ami.
He adored them.
Mon ami, speak English.
He adored these figurines. He insisted that a group of us build a group costume around them.
And so these were the costumes that the 6 of you were
To
wearing.
the finest detail.
So I see, of course, there's an Alecchino and a Colombina,
Mm-hmm.
which was your nephew and his fiancée. Am I right in these rumors? Or is that unproven?
I don't believe they ever made any official proclamations such as that.
Sure, but did you approve of the relationship?
She's a fascinating young lady.
Was.
What?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. She's also dead.
Goodness Godson.
Yeah, she died of a cocaine overdose overnight. Don't tell anybody. We're protecting her reputation.
Oh, my. Ugh. Wouldn't have.
He wouldn't have what? Sorry.
Well, he was... My nephew was staunchly anti-drug.
I find that interesting. He did have with him drugs. He was a drug-laden boy.
I don't believe it.
Look, I'll let you in on it. Come here. Lean closer. Bit closer. A little bit closer.
Hold on, my back isn't what it used to be.
Just a bit closer.
Uh-huh.
I think he took him from Coco. I think he took Coco's
I
drugs.
don't believe that she could influence him in that manner.
No. I think he was trying to protect her from her own drug usage and took the cocaine from her.
Oh, my, well, that's a tragedy. That's very sad, but...
Yeah, it is. Especially because it didn't work very well.
Ugh. No, that's quite unfortunate, but... So she was an addict, then?
Seems like it, yeah.
Well, addicts have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves, don't they? Oh, what a miserable affair this all is.
Yeah, 2 people are dead. It's pretty bad. Now, you said there are 6 figures. I started listing 2 of them. We know we're 3 in.
Mhm.
There's a Alecchino, a Colombina, there's a Punchinella.
Mhm.
What are the remaining 3?
There's Punchinella. There's a Pulcinella.
No
No.
relation.
Some possible relation, unclear, similar costume, possibly.
And that's a woman, I would assume.
Yes. Mrs. Malaby. Took that
Mrs.
one.
Malaby. Wonderful. All right.
And then after that, we've got the Davidsons, who played Pierrot and Pierrette. Also characters which I'm sure you are very familiar.
Pierrot and Pierrette. I don't know anything about those 2
No,
characters.
they're the French
vaguely
editions, aren't
familiar.
they?
They're a vaguely familiar name convention, but I don't know who they're meant to be. Now, I ask you, Mr. Beltane, I have a question that I'd like to answer honestly. How well did you know the other people at this dinner? You yourself said that in the first hour, you spent some time trying to guess who was behind each mask. How certain were you that the guests at the dinner were the people
Yeah,
that they were meant to
forgive
be?
me. Of our party, we were all quite certain. We arrived together, you see.
Lovely.
There
So
could be no doubt.
In your mind, or in anyone's mind, there could be no doubt.
Certainly not.
Did you see each other's faces? Did you
Yes,
lift the
yes.
mask? Okay, wonderful.
Several
the
times.
6 of you were
we
the 6
we
of you.
dined together as well. You can't do that with much of a mask on.
Fair enough. Although you said there was guessing going on.
Yes, between us and other guests, it was likely. There are only so many high society folks in London.
Of course. Do you think it's possible that your nephew could have been confused for somebody else?
Oh, there was nobody else in costumes even faintly like ours. Or are you saying that someone might have seen his costume and it was so inscrutable that they thought he was someone completely different?
Well, I mean, even if we knew your group was there,
Yes,
obviously
yes.
someone seeing you standing next to your nephew would know who your nephew was. But, for example, if I didn't know who was dressed as Alekino and who as Pierrot, could I have confused your nephew with Chris Davidson, for example?
I mean, they are similar ages and with costumes on, I suppose their builds aren't possibly?
That's all right. I'm just trying to paint a picture of the level of confusion possible. Did people correctly guess who you were in that first hour?
Oh, it wasn't very successful guessing all round.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do think that I got Madame Korowa.
Ah, Madame Korowa.
Yes.
A character you just invented by looking at the fish
No.
above my head that says Korowa on it?
I'm quite positive that I got hers right. But the unmasking portion of the evening was tragically not included for obvious reasons.
Were they that obvious? Your nephew's body wasn't found until 1:45. Is that when the...
That occurred right before the unmasking was going to happen. That's why a search party was formed to search for him, to look for him, so that he could be part of it.
Oh. So when he was found, it was a specific search party that was looking for him? He was known to have been missing?
I wouldn't say.
Or were they just gathering all the guests?
You'd best ask Mrs. Malaby
I
or
will.
the Colonel. I believe he was part of this. Ask one of them about it. They were more into it. I didn't go anywhere near the room during the search. But yes, I believe we were specifically meant to be looking to bring him back to the main room.
Of course, of course. Now, dinner. We've had our hour of reveille. I'll stick with it. Not quite revelry, probably. Reveille is just an hour of people trying to wake you up in the morning. You had dinner at 9 o'clock. How was the dinner? Was it tense? Was it cordial? Was it friendly? How well do you all get along eating a dinner together?
It was a little bit quiet, but I dare say that once the wine got flowing, things loosened up a tad.
Fair enough. Any reason for the possible tension at the start?
I do believe that it was between my nephew and Coco that started things, but all in all of the group was a little bit on edge of some sort.
Interesting. What do you know about the other members of this group? Mrs. Malaby, for instance. I hear she's a haggard old 36-year-old friend of the family. What is her relation
that's
to
hardly
everybody?
fair. Compared to me, she's sprightly and young. I could potentially still see her as young enough to marry.
Wild thing to say, dude.
But I wouldn't. I knew her husband well back in the day.
She is a widow, or?
Yes, yes.
Of course. Everybody's a widow. And how is she doing?
She is a strong and practical woman. I'm sure she has found the path to get through this.
Yeah,
It was quite a shock to her, I'm sure, to come across a body.
Of course. Now, Malaby herself, you say she's young enough that perhaps you could marry her one day. What's her relationship like with your nephew?
Purely friends.
Purely friends?
Purely friends. Like everyone else, she also enjoys a good theatrical show.
She does enjoy the theatre?
Yes, she does not perform, but she partakes in the audience seat.
Interesting. And of course, did she have a strained relationship at all with Coco?
I don't believe they knew much of each other at all. She doesn't come over from the States that often, you understand, Mrs. Malaby.
Of course, she's American. Why was she around over this time? Just happened to be?
Oh, just a perfect holiday. She can take them on a whim, being free and alone as she is. And this was the time she decided. I assume the West End Theatre exists right now. There
Sure.
was something playing that she was dying to see and didn't want the cheap States knockoff.
Of course. And what about the Davidsons? Chris and Woman.
He's an incredibly talented actor. Leading man material, I should say.
Interesting.
And she's a quiet little thing. Very little, really. Looks like she'd snap in the breeze.
All right, Chris Davidson, tiny wife, actor. Brackets, good. Interesting. And so you had your dinner. Tension seemed to relieve itself once the drinks came out.
Well, I'd say so.
And nothing happened at the dinner. No memorable arguments or events or conversations.
Ugh.
Anything that struck your memory thinking back to that dinner.
I do believe the tension grew a little bit, more than perhaps I led you to believe. And when I say that it began to relieve itself, for some more than others, Coco wanted to go home.
Fair enough. It seems like maybe her fiancé had stolen her drugs. Maybe she needed to get home and take some drugs. So she wanted to go home.
Yes, she did.
You didn't hear any reasons from her?
No. She didn't announce it. All I saw was her go over to Mr. Davidson and make a request.
Why was the request made to Mr. Davidson? Did he drive everybody here?
No, they're very old theatre friends. She wanted him to escort her home.
Coco and Davidson are old theatre friends. What do I know about Coco Courtney? Is she an actress herself?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, she acts at the Albany.
Mhm.
She is also from America.
No,
I made a joke about Albany being in America.
Yes.
I didn't know anyone was from America, and this is all new information about Miss Mallaby.
Yes.
Okay, I'm back on that. She's at the Albany Theatre in England. And she's old friends with Chris Davidson.
As I understand it, yes, that's how they formed their little circle. The actors from some show or another back in the day that my nephew became a big fan of, and he got to know the whole crew. Well, the whole cast, I should say.
Interesting. And Mrs. Davidson is not an actress.
No,
She's just a tiny woman.
of course. Again, very supportive, as I understand it.
Interesting. Coco asked Davidson to go. She said she wanted to go home. That's kind of weird, even if they were friends. Why not ask? I mean, presumably it means she was mad. This is an aside, by the way, Eustace. Feel free to take a drink, some sherry or something. It's early, but, your nephew died. If she's asked Davidson, like, I want to go home.
What a sad day.
Quiet. It's an aside. That feels like...
What a sad day.
Thank you. That feels like she must have been asking because she had a fight with Cronshaw, right? Otherwise, you just say, Cronshaw, take me home. But if you're going up to someone else and saying, hey, can you take me home? That implies some kind of tension between her and Cronshaw. Now, of course, I'm back, Mr. Eustace, Mr. Beltane. Davidson didn't take her home, presumably. They stayed later after dinner. What did you all do? You scurried back out into the hall?
Actually, I certainly did. To be honest, I lost track of the others in the group sometime after dinner, so... Let's see, I would assume it was only around 9:30, say, that Coco made the request to go home. Sometime between then and 9:45, I was out on the floor again. And from there, I couldn't say what went on with the others.
They didn't follow you out of the room? You left first?
I say I'm not quite sure. I didn't pay attention to the order.
And then you yourself, you partied the night away? Anything interesting of note before your nephew was found dead?
Not to my notice. Not until Mrs. Mallaby approached me and said, form a search party. We're bringing him back down here.
Interesting. All right. I'm not sure if I have more questions for you at the moment, Mr. Beltane.
That's fair. Call me any time.
No, I'll stick with Mr. Beltane.
Well, no.
No, please. If you have something to say.
Don't
let my poor investigative skills stop you from giving me information.
No, it's nothing to do with the case. It's just embarrassing. I've been practicing.
You've been practicing?
I've been practicing having people call me the Honourable Viscount.
Oh, because you're the new Viscount.
I am. I'm sorry.
Of course.
It's completely inappropriate.
No, you're right, because your brother must have been the 4th Viscount.
Quite.
Cronshaw, now that his nephew is dead, leaving no heirs, you stand to inherit the whole. You are the new Viscount.
Quite right.
Having benefited muchly from the death of your nephew.
One could say that.
Interesting. Let me see your hands, Mr.
Hands?
Do they have any knife blood
Oh,
on them?
interesting.
Let me check to see if it looked like you've been holding a bloody knife recently. Can I have a look at his costume?
Certainly.
Oh, can I have a look at his... Wait, I don't look at his costume.
Okay.
I look at the 6 figurines.
Okay.
Which figurine has a costume featuring green pom-poms?
So, the Punchinello and Pulcinellas, they are big. They are ruffles everywhere, frills everywhere, big hat, big nose, big hump. They are all mauve and yellow.
Mauve and yellow.
And when you mix mauve and yellow together...
So what about the Pierrot and Pierrette?
Very dainty, white and green.
Ooh.
With some white and green embellishments on them.
Pom-pom. That's interesting. So these are my suspects. I gotta try and see their costume to see which one has a torn bit. I can't imagine a tiny, tiny woman overpowered Cronshaw and stabbed him in the heart. Especially, I could imagine that, to be honest, as a real human being, but as an Agatha Christie-style human being, I feel like it's like, no tiny woman could ever stab a man through the heart. So I feel like I can rule that out. Pierrot, a.k.a. Pete Davidson, Chris Davidson, has jumped to the head of my suspects list.
Yeah, my.
By a good margin. He may not have killed him, but I can imagine getting into a fight over Coco's welfare and well-being. I worry that he and Coco are having a torrid affair. But we'll have to find out. Okay, I don't think I have any other questions for Eustace Bolton / the 6th Viscount Cronshaw. I wonder, I say to myself, and not to Eustace, if there is more to the relationship between him and Mallaby. And so she thinks not only, I could marry Eustace, but also why don't I kill this kid, marry Eustace, then I'm the Viscountess. And that's a great place to be in life. If Eustace and Mallaby are planning to, I'll ask someone else about that relationship, but there could be some value, something there as well, right? If you intend to marry the person who benefits hugely from a murder, you yourself benefit from the murder. Through the associative property of marriage. I should talk to more people. That's my fundamental flaw in investigation. I don't talk to enough people, and then our audience gets mad that the killer is revealed when finally I talk to them. They say, what was I doing on the evening? I was killing the Viscount. You should have talked to me first. Jonathan Stabs. So I'm going to call Jonathan Stabs, I think, do I go straight to Pierrot and Pierrette, or do I talk to Mallaby first? I think let's go to Pierrot. Let's go to the Davidsons.
You go to the Davidsons' house.
I go to the house of the Davidsons.
You are greeted by Mrs. Davidson, and sure enough, she is quite a small, frail-looking, again, not old lady by any stretch of the imagination, a borderline 28 years old.
Okay, so a normal human who's probably a bit too young to be a normal human. You're not a real human. You're exactly my age, and any older you're too old, and any younger you're too young.
Poirot would find her ridiculously young. Hastings would find her a bit too old to be worthwhile.
Oh God, what losers. Okay, so a young woman, 28. I mean, Coco's what, 25?
Probably
younger. Cronshaw was 25.
Yes.
So Coco's probably, let's call her 20.
Sure.
Let's call Mrs. Davidson 28. Let's call Chris Davidson 40. We'll find out, I suppose. And Eustace is probably...
You know what? No, he gets specifically described as young.
Oh, lovely. So he's also 28.
Age appropriate.
Eustace, let's call 52.
50, around 50 specifically.
Right. And we're saying Mallaby's probably 31.
Yeah, she didn't get an age. She just got pretty widow.
Pretty widow. All right, let's talk to the Davidsons. I say, bonjour, Bonjour, Mrs. Davidson. That's as much accent as you're getting out of me for this conversation. I'd like to talk to you and your husband.
That only makes sense.
Are you both alive, first of all? Have either of you died in the meantime?
What?
Lots of people are dead.
Oh my goodness.
Obviously, you know that Viscount Cronshaw, the 5th Viscount Cronshaw,
Yes,
died
of course.
last night.
It's terrible.
Coco has also died.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Coco died of well, I won't say, but she has been found dead this morning. And Eustace Beltane
What?
whisked away in a
What?
tornado.
What?
Yeah, there was a localized tornado last night. His
Who
house
are
is,
you again?
House is destroyed.
Do you have
And
identification?
No, I don't. Can you invite me in? I'd like to talk about the
It's a
crime.
vampire again.
I need you to invite me in before I can question you. That is one of the old laws. The deep magic.
All right, you enter their sitting room. Chris Davidson watching you very suspiciously.
All right, I'd like to talk to these Davidsons, and I say, look, there's been a tragedy, obviously.
Yes.
Your friend has died. And I do hate to inform you as well, Mr. Davidson, that Coco has died. She did not wake up this morning.
I scarcely believe it.
I look at his face. Does he seem distraught, like the love of his life is dead? The woman with whom he's been having a torrid affair?
You would say that he is holding composure pretty well. You wouldn't.
But he's an actor.
You wouldn't. Yeah, you are unable to discern exactly, but you don't feel like he's on the verge of romantic collapse right now.
That's a good phrase. Can we write a book and call it The Verge of Romantic Collapse? That's fun. I'd like to ask you a little bit about last night.
Sure. Are you interested in both of us, or just one at a time? How does this work?
You know what? Let's go one at a time until I have a question where I decide I only want to ask you, and then I'll let you step out of the room.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you mean both of us here?
Yeah, both of you here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite.
Good.
Do you agree, wife?
Well,
I suppose so.
all right. No, you know what? Get out of here, wife. No, you know what? Come back here, wife. Mrs., you stay. Chris, you go.
Sure.
I can't imagine you have much to offer because you don't have a first name, but
Her eyes are a little bit indignant at that.
Mrs. Davidson, could you tell me a little bit about the party last night? You were dressed in costume as Pierrette.
Yes, that's right.
Do you have the costume on hand?
Of course. It's up. Sure. Should I go?
Lead me up to where the costumes are.
Oh, okay.
That's just where I'd like to start my investigation.
Not a problem. Here is my wardrobe.
I look at the Pierrette costume.
Mm-hmm.
How are its baubles? Its pom-poms?
One is missing.
Ooh, he was groping. Or fighting for his life. Can I look at the Pierrot costume?
Oh, Chris, darling, would you escort him into your clothing area?
Oh, come on, you freak. You know where all the clothes are. All right, I go with Chris to his clothes.
You see his costume? Designed in a very similar fashion, obviously a little bit bigger.
And how are its poms?
Intact.
Intact poms on this pom. All right. That's interesting. So the green pom removed and held, clutched in the hand of our dead victim was from the costume of Pierrette. Mrs. Davidson. That's weird. That's weird. Okay. I don't know who to ask and how to ask. How do you do an investigation? Mrs. Davidson.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about last night. You
Absolutely.
arrived, all 6 of you together?
Yes, that's right. 8 p.m. on the dot.
Wonderful.
I keep careful time.
Fantastic. You had dinner at 9.
Correct.
Before that, did you note anything about the evening, about people's attitudes? Anything noteworthy in that first hour of the party in which you were mingling and co-mingling?
Most certainly. Even on the ride over, Coco was deeply upset.
Really? Do you know why?
Of course not. You don't ask people about these sorts of things. But her eyes were red and faint. It was, without a doubt in my mind, tear-stained.
Please stop existing for one moment. Hey, audience, is there a chance that this entire evening, like, the cocaine overdose was not accidental, but rather an intentional attempt at suicide from a woman who's been spurned by her possible fiancé? They've never made the appropriate commitment. Maybe she was like, tonight's the night you're going to propose, and he was said, nah, dollface, tonight's the night I'm going to start my illicit relationship with Mrs. Malaby, the widow. She's going to be the new Viscountess. You're nothing to me, you scum-ridden scum. Maybe that's what happened. She wanted to leave. She was sad before they even got there, so something happened. All right. If Coco was so sad, did you see how Cronshaw was feeling? Did he seem indifferent to her sadness or different to it?
The tension certainly reached him.
I could imagine.
But was he actively trying to comfort her and tell her not to be upset? No, that didn't happen.
Interesting. Now, Coco, you've known her for a while?
Quite some time, yes.
Through the theatre?
Exactly.
She and your husband get along quite well.
Of course.
They perform together?
Yes, when you work together in those environments. Perhaps you've been in the theatre yourself. You know that bonds form.
Of course, of course. Now, look, I hate to be indiscreet or inappropriate. You never worried about a relationship between Coco and your husband?
Certainly not.
You seem so sure. Why not?
One knows these things.
Okay.
And if you want me to provide proof, well, their chemistry on stage, they rarely performed romantically against each other because it was not there. I don't mean to criticize either of their performances, but it was a well-known fact.
Interesting.
They were romantically awkward.
I will say, Mrs. Davidson, have you ever seen the American situational comedy Friends?
Tell me more.
It posits a theory that on the stage, the less chemistry between two actors, the more likely they're in a romantic relationship off stage.
And what's the conclusion of said episode?
Well, I think the conclusion is that isn't true, and it's just a paranoia built on in Chandler's mind? I don't remember quite well enough. So maybe it's
until
unrelated.
Significantly later when the entire situation blows up in his face and then she does end up romantically linked with the other actor, I believe.
Exactly.
But
You're
only
not worried,
afterwards.
You're not worried about anything like that happening.
Am I worried that should I leave my husband, he will go on to pursue a relationship with someone else? No, that doesn't overly concern me.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. I'm liking you a lot for a woman with no name. Should we name you?
I've always felt like a Greta.
A Greta? All right, go for it, Greta Davidson. So they were old friends, your husband and Ms. Courtney.
Mm.
What do you know about Ms. Courtney's, let's say, recreational drug use?
The papers would describe her as one with an active social life.
And how would you describe her?
A party girl. Not as much as Mrs. Malaby, but, very different fields.
Interesting. Mrs. Malaby is a party girl.
She loves a good party. Now, I will say she loves this sort of party. Fancy balls.
Ah, of course.
Big dudes.
A high-class party girl.
Yes, Coco was I don't know if this term has reached you yet, an underground scene fan.
Of course, of course. So she was deeply upset before you even arrived. That tension.
Oh, yes.
You never knew why. You didn't ask.
No.
That's fair enough, although she is dead now, so you'll never be able to ask. And then you had dinner at 9. That tension remained in the air?
Quite so.
Anything interesting happen at that dinner?
Well, about 2/3 of the way through, Coco stood up and demanded to go home.
To your husband?
Yes, exactly.
Was there any reason that you didn't go home?
I wasn't ready to. I don't think anyone expected the evening to end so soon. I think it was meant to be just for Coco.
And you say it was sudden?
Yes.
Did you see any inciting incident? Any argument or?
Mr. Beltane had, I suppose, poured his wine a little freely and was being perhaps a bit boisterous, bit obnoxious in his exuberance. Perhaps it just was all too much for her, trying to pretend to be happy.
And obviously this is what Coco was doing. You didn't see how Cronshaw reacted, or?
They were not speaking.
Interesting. And I've heard precious little about Mrs. Malaby at this dinner.
She's a perfectly good dinner guest. There wasn't much to say.
Wonderful. And after the dinner, I know Eustace left first. How long, or is that not right?
Well, No, I suppose there was Coco, of course. Coco, she came up to my husband and and said she wanted to go home. Then she stepped outside for a moment.
Of course.
And then the rest of us left. I didn't pay careful attention to the order, but that would be Mr. Beltane, myself, Mrs. Malaby left. Chris and the Lord Viscount stayed behind.
Of course.
Chris wanted to talk some sense into him.
So Chris stayed behind to talk to your...
Yes.
Did Chris eventually join the party again? Did either of them join the party again?
From what I understand, he gave up on that quite quickly. Lord Cronshaw was adamant about not apologizing for whatever he had done to upset Coco. We definitely were of the opinion that it was his doing that she was so upset. And so, no, very shortly after, he took her home, and he went from there back here. He, I believe, planned to return to the party, but it didn't end up happening.
So your husband left early to take Coco home?
Yes, that's
She
right.
didn't stay until the body was found?
No,
She
not
was
at all.
already home at that time?
That's right.
As was your husband?
Yes.
You yourself stayed at the party?
I did.
And got home on your own steam?
Well, by the time the police arrived, all sorts of escorts had been arranged.
Of course. Interesting. And now I hesitate, audience, to ask this question, but let's see what happens. I have one final question for you, Greta.
Mm.
At what point in the evening did Cronshaw rip your costume?
She looks a little bit taken aback, and she frowns. Ripped? No. Sorry, I think you're misunderstanding. I tore it on a banister.
On a banister, did you?
It came right off, and I asked if he could hold it for the evening because he had pockets.
Interesting. Interesting. If that's your story, you can stick with it.
I plan to.
Which banister?
Bottom of the stairs on my way up.
Interesting.
No, top of the stairs on the way down.
Oh, well, looks like your story's changing, Mrs. Davidson.
It was right after dinner, not right before.
All right. Well, I have no more questions for you. I suppose I should talk to your husband.
Please do.
I have 2 more people to talk to, but we're getting close to this. I don't think we can fit them into this episode. So maybe I should do a quick little plan here and tell you what I think so far. Shall I?
Sounds good.
I still have yet to talk to Mrs. Malaby, Chris Davidson, and to the elusive Colonel Digby. Though I can't imagine he's actually that helpful. But he did find the body.
He'd be great.
3 people to talk to. But what have I discovered? Coco and Cronshaw were having a fight. Clearly, from the beginning. Although other people have assumed this, so maybe it is an incorrect assumption. But Coco was sad. Cronshaw, not helpful. He took drugs from her. Maybe out of love. To say, don't take all these drugs. Or maybe she said to him, I'm going to overdose on all these drugs. And so he took them from her so she couldn't, to save her life. Of course, she had another stash at home, and when she left and went home, she killed herself then. Or maybe just tried to drown her grief in cocaine a little too deeply. I have to think there's something romantic happening to cause that kind of sadness. What was the quote that we just came up with? Someone was on the edge of romantic.
The verge of romantic.
I can't remember. It was a good phrase and I've forgotten it already. But
Collapse?
yeah, there was a romantic collapse perhaps. I still think there could be something to do with a relationship with his Malaby character, purely because she's a woman. Honestly, that's it, really. There's another woman. And so she's here. It could be Mrs. Davidson, but she seems pretty cool. And I haven't met Malaby yet. But something's going on. Some I'm not going to marry you moment. She tries to leave. Chris Davidson goes back to talk some sense into him, maybe violently, angrily. For all we know, I think I asked Mrs. Davidson, did we see the body? Not the body. Did we ever see him leave the dinner before he was found?
Wait, what?
Did we ever see Cronshaw leave the supper room? Did he ever return to the party
I
himself?
don't think you did specifically ask that.
I ask that to her now.
I believe that some people saw him about, yes.
Yeah, some people saw him about, not just a random person dressed. Oh, okay, wait. Wait, is there any way Davidson... Okay, I'm piecing it together, everybody. I haven't even talked to people. Davidson goes into the supper hall angrily about whatever the issue is. I haven't figured out the issue yet. Get off my back, everybody. He stabs him. He says, "Avast ye," and he stabs him in the heart with a knife, killing him. And now he thinks, I need an alibi. My name's Chris Davidson and I've got to be careful here. So he leaves the party. Everyone knows Chris Davidson is gone. He's gone home. He takes Coco home. He says, "Don't take too many drugs. Bye," and leaves. Or maybe he kills her. I don't know. Chris Davidson then says, "How do I get an alibi?" Well, everyone knows I left the party. But I myself am a talented actor. You think I don't have an Alakino costume sitting in my cupboard? Did he have an Alakino costume sitting in his cupboard?
You didn't see an Alakino costume sitting in his cupboard.
Let's say he has an Alakino costume somewhere. He turns...
Well, now that I look even closer.
One more. Look, there's more space dust in this wardrobe. He returns to the party. Maybe he dons that Alakino costume. Maybe he strips the body and dons the costume. He sneaks in somehow through a window. Did you say they had curtains drawn? I never checked behind the curtains. Was one of the windows jimmied open?
You'll have to go back and find out later.
Oh, we'll have to check that next episode. He dons the Alakino costume. He runs around the party. I established already they were similar age, similar build. They could possibly be confused by people who didn't know them very well. He wanders around the party just being like, "Well, look at me. I'm Lord Cronshaw. I'm having quite a lovely time at this party being Lord Cronshaw. Oh, you want to know what it's like to be a Viscount? Let me tell you, for I am a Viscount. Specifically, the 5th Viscount Cronshaw." He goes back into the room, redresses the body. Alibi established. He left before this, he left already. He's killed the guy. He puts him back in his Alakino costume. He pops back out the window, goes home again. No one is going to see him at home. No one's going to miss him at home. Everyone's like, he's been home. His wife's still at the party. Goes home. No one's none the wiser. And he's successfully killed a person. But I don't know why. That's the theory. I'm sticking with it.
And next episode, got some questions to ask because there are a couple of things that you have not accounted for with that.
I've accounted for everything. Solve This Murder is created by Bill Sunderland and Dani Siller as part of the Consume This Media network. To find out more about all of our shows, you can head to consumethismedia.com. A special thank you to Jared, Devon and Whit from the podcast Advanced Sagebrush and Shootouts for creating our theme music. And thanks to all of you for listening.